While a few of you may actually know the story behind Risk of Rain in the series, I promise you it's a lot deeper and a lot more important to the modern gaming industry than any of us ever imagined, especially me. And I'm not just talking about important in general, I'm talking about setting standards. How this game, how this company, how the story behind this world should be the standard for all video games going forward. Now, if you're someone like me who only knew Risk of Rain 2 and assumed there was a first one from a buddy of mine on YouTube, thank you for the gameplay, then this story is going to be crazy. But if you're already indulged in the lore behind these games and what was going on behind the scenes and all of it, then I think you'd be surprised because even you are going to be walking away with some details. I actually reached out to both developers of Risk of Rain 1 and 2 out on Twitter or X, whatever, about this game to try to get an interview. When I didn't get a response there, I also moved to Discord. I didn't get anything there, so I did a little extra digging to compensate, and I think I've dug out some crazy stories that you guys have never even heard of before. This is the story behind Risk of Rain 2 and why this should be the standard for every video game and video game company in the world. Check out the pinned comment and follow me on Twitter or X or whatever. Two newly graduated students from the University of Washington walked out of the university one last time and decided that they wanted to create something huge together, something world-changing. Little did they know that Paul Morse and Duncan Drummond would definitely fulfill that. Shortly after they walked off campus, they founded Hopoo Games, a small indie group dedicated to making something amazing. And right after founding Hopoo Games, they immediately started making the game. On March 13th, 2013, they started a Kickstarter that was able to raise $20,000. This allowed them to work full-time on the game and to polish it up for the release date that was coming later that same year. Just to be clear, I want to give props to the co-founder, designer, and producer Paul Morse, who was one of the original guys, co-founder, creative lead, and technical lead Duncan Drummond, again, one of the main OG guys, and main programmer Jeffrey Gore Hunt. I want to give a special bit of attention to this guy because, guys, programming and coding and all that stuff, it's an entire world. These guys did an excellent job in a very short amount of time. Nevertheless, on November 8th, 2013, so not long after the Kickstarter and not long after they started making the game, it was released. And it was met with so much love from the community. The level of replayability in the game and built into the game mechanics kept people coming back and kept every match unique, fresh, and something new. Every match was different from the others because this game was based off of procedural generation, which means that even the maps of these games were different each game. That is fantastic. The unique and well-handled mechanics were everything that the fans who had invested money in, or maybe some money and maybe not, were hoping for. The game was worth, genuinely, in the end, every penny. The quality was astounding, and I'll get to something very important in a second, but nevertheless, the game was met with overwhelmingly positive reviews, and it deserved every bit of this, and more. Hopoo Games, and this is the important thing, did a fantastic and, dare I say, rare job of engaging and listening to the fans through Reddit and Steam forums and so many kinds of different things. Both Paul and Duncan were part of different Steam forums and Reddit forums, and they were engaging with the audience, talking about the game, getting ideas for updates, listening to the fans, and working with what they got, the feedback, and putting that back into the game. Did they listen to everything? Of course not. Did they listen to none of it? No. They were amazing with how they handled it. In the end, they were building a community that was absolutely stunning. And it was like this was part of the cool kids club or something. Like you were part of the cool kids club if you were engaging with this community, right? Because that was the culture they were building up. Amazing job. Nevertheless, not long after the release of the first one, they wanted to bump it up with a sequel, but by transitioning to something huge. Risk of Rain was a 2D game. They wanted to make a sequel that was a 3D game. Well, with this pretty stinking big goal came a lot of challenges. How are they going to keep the heart of what made the first game so special and gained it overwhelmingly positive reviews and transition that and still keep that in a 3D game? Something completely different. Well, they got the help of GEARBOX Publishing for the process. They wanted to keep elements from the first game in the second game and only build off of them. This was a big goal, especially when you're considering that the perspective, the dimensions of the game were changing. Okay, that's actually cool. They wanted to keep it chaotic, they wanted to keep it fast-paced, procedurally generated maps, but also build off of the old game, you know, building more characters, more items, more features, all of it. They started development of Risk of Rain 2 in 2016. No Kickstarter used this time, which is very interesting. Now, I want to take a second and say this says a lot about the company and says a lot about Paul and Duncan and just Hopoo games in general. Not only do they create an amazing game, not only do they only start the Kickstarter after most of the game was developed for the first game, not only do they do, I mean, an astounding job of just talking, like genuinely talking with the audience and the fans and the people playing this game, but they're also good with money. I feel like money can really divide a relationship up. I mean, that's just me, but how certain people handle money can really mess things up in a relationship. They did a stanking, fantastic job here. They used sales and still some of the Kickstarter funds that they got from the first game to develop the second game. They didn't continue asking for money. They weren't hungry for money. These were two guys who were, and more, again, I shouted out the programmer and all that stuff. This was an indie team of people who genuinely loved the audience and loved making great games. Whoa, did I just say that? Yeah, I think I did. So props to them for that. Well, on March 28th, 2019, roughly 3 years after they started development, it launched on early access, gaining over 1 million copies sold. Over 1 million people wanted to play this game in early access. That's huge. Despite this success though, and despite these numbers, which obviously would only grow bigger once the game was actually released and fully polished and ready to go, Hopoo Games was still focused on making the game amazing and connecting with the audience. It still wanted to build off of what the first game had, the special heart of it, not do away with any of it, and still connect and engage with the people playing the game. Amazing. During the early access phase, to absolutely maximize player feedback, they started a Dev Thoughts blog to talk about the game and what their thoughts were with the community. Amazing. Just like, how many times do I have to say the word amazing? Wow, I'm actually lost for words, what the heck? Needless to say, they perfectly executed the transition from 2D, chaotic, procedurally generated, different heroes and characters, survivors, and different everything and items and features, perfectly transitioned that into a 3D game, and it was only better, because this opened the door to so much more freedom, especially when it comes to the map and procedural generated ideas and features. There are tons of ways that this game could have failed, it's too hard to build off of what a 2D game did, so we're just gonna switch to 3D and kind of dump everything that the 2D game did. No, they perfectly did it. Just amazing job. On August 11th, 2020, the full release was in full effect. Ooh! And on December of 2020, the same year, not a month later, it had sold over 4 million copies. I will remind you that this is just a small indie group, started by two guys who walked off of a campus way off in Washington, or maybe it's right next, maybe you live in Washington, never mind, who wanted to do something big but didn't have a lot of people. They even needed a Kickstarter. Guys, they did it. You can do it. They still continued to add to the game, bringing more life to it, stay in touch with the audience and so on, and it was just amazing. They stayed connected with the fans via extra added competitions and events, even way after launch, so they were still adding new features to this game even after the game was out and done. Amazing job. Live streams and even Q&As, continual updates and love from the company to the audience. This was a connection, this was a relationship, this was a community, and they did it perfectly. Now, there's a very big event that we're coming up on that's going to change the course of this, but I want to mention a very big update that came to the game, or that started development. Morse and Drummond were both working hard, and the rest of the team, at making something called the Survivors of the Void. This was supposed to be a huge update that brought so much more life to the game, but it was as if something bigger was around the corner, and something bigger was around the corner. In November of 2022, so roughly 2 years after the Risk of Rain 2 was released, GEARBOX acquired the Risk of Rain IP, meaning that they can do whatever they want with it, and that they basically own the rights to the Risk of Rain franchise. Now, as imagined, this caused a lot of worry and concern among the fans who, let's face it, who really gets to enjoy a connection and a community like these guys did? With GEARBOX now controlling and in charge of the future of this franchise, to say that people will be worried would be a duh statement. I mean, duh, people were worried. The OG devs, Paul Morse and Duncan Drummond, still tried to calm the concerned fans, saying that the future of the games was in good hands and that the awesomeness would continue. Now, I will also mention this, that Hopoo Games at this moment were free to do whatever they wanted now. They could go off and make another, another series of games. I was trying to think of a name kind of like Risk of Rain. That's too cool, though. Possibility of Thunder. Ooh! Okay, yeah, that's cool. That's mine. I got it. It's mine. But even with this freedom, they decided to do something else that shows you how much love that they have for this community. Don't forget this, because we'll be coming back to it in a second. Again, I want to mention that even after Gearbox acquired the IP to the Risk of Rain franchise, Hopoo Games and the OG devs and the people who built this world still cared about the fan base as well. They weren't just worried about, Gearbox, are you gonna mess this up? Don't mess this up. No, they were talking with the fans about trying to help the fans through their concern. Amazing. Like, just good company, good guys. Clap, that's it, good. Well, it turns out that they made a deal with Gearbox, allowing them to continue working on a project that they had been hiding for a bit now. The Risk of Rain Returns, an amped up version of the first game. While it's still under development with the OG devs Paul Morse and Duncan Drummond still in the lead, you're left with almost a bittersweet ending. To have something so perfect in the hands of the people who built it, now being traded off to people who didn't build it. We've seen this situation before. I even told a story about it in one of my recent videos. All of our fingers are crossed that they won't mess this up, but hey, we do have a bright light at the end of the tunnel because Gearbox is still allowing the OG devs to continue building the world. So hey, that's a good sign. Don't lose hope. Now, I want to point out a couple things. Take a second, stop the amazing, hopeful music, and I want you to remember something. Look at the games around us right now. Specifically, look at the companies around us right now. Ubisoft has sucked for a while now. I mean, everyone on this channel pretty much hates Ubisoft for what they did to Hyperscape. Blizzard has sucked for a bit now. And so on. CD Projekt Red has struggled. It's just so on. Guys, compare the modern gaming companies, employees, priorities, work ethic, and so on to what we see in this story right here. Compare it, genuinely. Besides Blizzard's sucky games and fails and, poor decisions with Overwatch as a franchise, and even blowing up and getting angry at Marvel rivals for doing their job right, and even better than they did, their employees are not afraid to come out and say that they want roughly half the US population to just die for political beliefs. Goodness, guys. They do not connect with the audience. When was the last time that you saw any connection from a modern, big AAA, or even lower than that, company with fans like you see in this Risk of Rain story? Not at all. Ubisoft doesn't even listen to the fans. Look at Assassin's Creed Shadows. So not only do they just not engage with the audience and the people, spending their hard-earned money, our hard-earned money on their games, they don't even listen to us. The modern gaming industry, as of now, before it collapses soon, I believe I'm gonna make a future video on that, we've lost the art of making a game. Not us, the consumers. I'll get to that very soon because there's something very special in that story. The producers, the people in charge of it, they have lost the art of making a game. An art that Hopoo Games nailed and kept very close to their heart. They built an audience. They built a community. It was more than just a game. As I said before, it was almost like being part of the cool kids club. You could talk to the guys who made the game. Are you kidding me? And they talked back. That's the amazing part. What we see in this Hopoo Games story and this Risk of Rain story is something that every single gaming company out there, every single game should aspire to be. These guys perfectly captured the art of making a game. Well done, bravo, and kudos. Well, what do you think? Guys, I'm not gonna lie, I freaking love this video. There's a lot of working going on behind the scenes, but I just want to say thank you to this guy for the comments in my last Harry Potter video, because with this, I was inspired to completely change how I've been doing prompts and bullet points, and I believe that I finally nailed it, guys. Thank you, Yellow Ninja, for being able to use your gameplay, and bro, it's been a while. How are you doing, bro? Talk about communities, I'm trying to build one here on this channel, so if you like the video, drop a school bus. When was the last video that wasn't interrupted by a motorcycle, a bus, or... Oh my god, it's never stopped right outside my house before. This was great. And that starts with you guys commenting. I want to hear your feedback on the videos. I want to hear your feedback on everything. Again, check out the pinned comments and follow me on Twitter because, that's my behind the scenes haven if you want to see how I'm making the videos or different thumbnail designs or, just crazy thoughts along the way. That's kind of where I put it all. So, I love you guys. I hope you have a great rest of the day. And remember, life is short. Play great games. We've all heard of games getting into a bit of controversy, especially these days. In fact, it's so common these days that it feels weird if a game doesn't go through an absolute train wreck of a mess in the development of the game. Now, above many of the games that have gotten controversy or faced